Wozometrics and welcome to Wozometrics. My name is Looney and today we're focusing on your final exam prep for geography. All you need to do to send your questions and comments through to us is search for Wozometrics on all our social media platforms as well as hit us up on our WhatsApp line. All of the details are on the screen. We've got a cool competition going on for you guys, so please stay tuned to get all of those details later on in the show. I've got Nicolene, our sign language interpreter, as well as Cameline, our awesome teacher. Thank you so much, guys, and over to you.
Hi, Looney, Nicolene. Guys, welcome back. Trust you've been studying well, and now it's time for geography. Today's lesson, Geography Paper 1, with a special emphasis just for you on paragraph writing. Paragraph writing extends across the entire curriculum. So whether it's in English, life sciences, physical sciences, all subjects require you to write in paragraphs. So today's lesson is about focusing on what types of information you will need, the types of skills involved in writing your geography paragraphs. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. So, remember, in Geography Paper 1, we have 3 types of questions. These are short objective questions, data response questions, as well as paragraph questions. These questions are formulated to give you a total mark of 225 in Geography Paper 1. Focusing specifically on paragraph questions, remember the following. The paragraph questions are out of a total of 64 marks. That means across 4 questions, a total of 64 marks are allocated to paragraph questions. Because Geography Paper 1 is a choice question, it means that 48 marks are dedicated to just paragraph writing. That means, guys, almost 25% of your geography paper is writing in paragraphs. Hence, in preparation for that positive result in geography, you've got to practice paragraph writing and know the skills that are involved in you ensuring that you gain the maximum possible marks in this particular type of question. Also remember the following. Paragraph writing is a consolidation of geographical knowledge. What does this mean? In each of the topics in your curriculum, paragraph writing is there for consolidation of a topic. It brings into account all the different aspects that you've studied in a topic into a paragraph. So your knowledge of the entire content has to be crisp enough in order for you to understand what aspects are required in a paragraph writing. Remember that what's important in paragraph writing is the verb usage, what we call instructional verbs. These verbs give us an understanding of the requirements of how the paragraph must be structured. And remember, verbs help determine at which point in the order of the question you are located. So let's look at some of these verbs used. 50% of the geography examination is pitched at a level 2 verb, which means that you will get verbs like describe, explain, discuss, and suggest. Also consider that 25% of the examination is on verbs like discuss, analyze, and evaluate. You will note that discuss is located in both a middle order question as well as a high order question. What does this mean? As we go into detail on different paragraphs, then you will be able to understand what it means to discuss at an application level and discuss various different aspects at a high order level. For this lesson, I have taken past year papers, previous examinations that deal with paragraph questions and group them according to the broad curriculum topics. What does this mean? I've taken all the climate and weather questions and put them together as paragraph questions. for you to be able to see patterns and understand how these questions are formulated so that your responses are more designed to answer the question. Great, let's move on. The first question that we're looking at is from the November 2019 NSC examination, question 1.36. Let's look at the structure of this paragraph. In a paragraph of approximately 8 lines, suggest, note the instructional verb. You are suggesting, giving ideas. Immediately, as you've been learning in your classrooms, different types of verbs have different requirements. When it comes to a suggest type of verb, that simply means you've got to give your own ideas about the content. And what are we talking to? The negative impact. Immediately, the impact of geographical phenomena is qualified as negative. So that means my responses must be all in terms of negative responses. High wind speeds will have on the coastal areas of Mozambique. Now, if you look at this previous question paper, your 2019 paper, you'll note that this question was in the topic of tropical cyclones. And what you should also note is that tropical cyclones have devastating weather conditions like torrential rainfall, high wind speeds, gale force winds, and these have a negative impact on both coastal as well as inland locations. In this particular paragraph type question, the coastal location was emphasized. And what is the question asking you to do? Highlight the negative impacts. And the moment you look at the word impact, what are we talking to? Economic, social, and environmental. But in this particular question, if I look closely, it will have on the coastal areas of Mozambique. That means that you would have worked out upon reading this question that you will be looking at firstly the physical, and then the economic, and then the social. This would help enhance your answer because when you're looking at the devastating effects of these weather conditions, they have a negative impact. If the word impact was used without a qualifier like negative, you would have been expected to write both the positive and the negative. In this particular example, we are focusing on the negative impacts. Let's look at some of the possible answers. Loss of human life. Immediately, I'm responding in terms of the social. And this answer is common. Start using it. Loss of human life. Increases the rate of coastal erosion. Increased damage. Increased displacements. What are you noticing? It's not good enough just to include the word life or loss of life. You must qualify it. And in this particular example, the words that are being used are increasing. Note, increases the rate of coastal erosion. So when we're talking to coastal erosion, it must be qualified by the word increase. Remember, we're talking to high wind speeds. And in this particular example, the high wind speeds increases the rate. So in my paragraph, when I'm answering, I must be thinking about the qualifiers. And what are the qualifiers? The relationships between increasing and decreasing. Herein lies the challenge, guys. You must be able to recognize the relationship in the question in terms of its impact and qualify it in terms of increasing or decreasing. The negative impact will always increase on impact. So all my answers are designed to show an increasing impact on the environment. Hence, increases coastal erosion, increases damage to coastal biodiversity and the natural habitats. Note how I've integrated my physical response into one answer. Storm surges, and remember these are your high waves. As a result of this gale force winds associated with the tropical cyclone, High wind speeds result in higher waves. And what do these waves do? Create tsunami-like heights and destroy coastal regions. So we refer to them in geography as storm surges. And note how it's qualified. Increased displacement of people as a result of the gale force winds will flood the coastal areas. What am I looking for in your responses? The relationships. How is it increasing or decreasing? And in this particular example, the words negative impact helped the candidates better understand that they should be looking at how these impacts occur. Let's look at another climate and weather question. In this particular paragraph, again, write a paragraph of approximately 8 lines explaining. Note the instructional verb that is used in this question, explain, which means that this question is designed for you to apply your knowledge to the content that is being examined. And what are we doing? The weather conditions that will be experienced by Cape Town with the approach of a cold front. What have we learned? Yes, this question is about the mid-latitude cyclone. And what is important is, with an approaching cold front towards Cape Town, you should know that the Cape Town area will be dominated by the warm sector. And what is the warm sector? As a cold front reaches, you're looking at, correct, cumulonimbus clouds. But in this case, the word approaches is operative. What are they looking for? Before the cumulonimbus clouds reach Cape Town, what type of weather? Note the question requires, again, qualifiers. What type of qualifiers? Remember, in our first question, we dealt with increasing and decreasing. Now, what happens just before the cumulonimbus clouds reach? Let's look at some of those responses. In this particular example, we should have noted the warm sector of the cold front reaches. However, it has not completely reached Cape Town. Look at how the warm sector is designed in the cross-section of your mid-latitude cyclone. So, the operative qualifying words are moderate. Note how the responses are designed. We are qualifying the types of weather associated with an approaching cold front. So in this particular example, gentle to moderate winds with an even pressure gradient. What does this mean? The winds are not strong yet because the cold front is approaching, but the winds are moderate. Cloud cover is moderate. The cumulonimbus cloud of the cold front has not reached Cape Town. It is still approaching. But what is the current weather? Moderate clouds with isolated winds and drizzle. Not your torrential rainfall, but light showers, drizzle. Note how I'm using my words of precipitation to qualify that approaching cold front weather conditions. Air is less dense due to moderate temperatures. Remember now that the cold front is approaching, so your temperatures are variable. And in this particular example, we're looking at moderate temperatures as Cape Town will be experiencing weather that is coming associated with torrential rainfall as well as gale force winds. Relative humidity of the atmosphere is low and less dense. So these are the qualifiers. Can you see how my responses are designing paragraph writing? I'm using words that enhance the content. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for you to tell me, is it increasing, decreasing, or in this case, remaining moderate? Are we understanding how paragraph writing in geography works? It's about you and your ability to identify the relationship. And what is that relationship? An increasing or a decreasing relationship, dependent on what is required from the question. Let's move on. And with that, we come to a break, and I'm sure Looney and Nicolene needed too. See you soon.
Thank you, Cameron. Guys, we are going to take a quick break, but please don't go anywhere. We'll see you straight after this. Welcome back from the break, Matrix. If you've just joined us, we are still doing your final exam prep to help you with the upcoming exams. This next competition is for anyone who's constantly running out of data or you just want to win yourself something. Matrix is bringing you the hashtag WazzoWinner competition, where 2 lucky Matrix stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. All you need to do to enter is head on over to our Facebook page and all of the details will be there. Thank you so much, Cameron, and over to you.
Thanks, Looney. Thanks, Nicolene. Guys, paragraph writing, but hashtags plays. You need that data, don't you? So, looking at it in terms of paragraph writing, we've just completed the climate and weather. Now we'll be focusing on geomorphology in terms of paragraph writing skills, the next area of content of focus. So let's look at some of the questions that were in previous examinations that helps you to better understand how and what type of skills to use in paragraph writing. The geomorphology question also comes from the 2019 NSC question 164. So if you've got your past year papers, you can open them up and have a look at what types of questions were asked before this paragraph questions. And again, I'm going to remind you that paragraph questions are designed to consolidate the content of the topic. So your knowledge has to come together, and using these instructional verbs, identify what areas does the examinations examine you on. Let's look closely at this question. In a paragraph of approximately 8 lines, discuss. Now note that instructional verb discuss. It requires to give a point of view. But when we discuss both negative as well as positive. If the question does not specify, the expectation is that your discussion will be both on the negative as well as the positive aspects of that content. Let's look closely at what this question is asking. In terms of this question, why sustainable river management is important for all sectors of the economy. Note the integration again. We're taking physical geography and integrating it with economic geography for this paragraph question. How is your knowledge of these sections? You would have had to know the content in order to respond in a discussion type of response. What are the requirements? In this question, sustainable river management comes from, correct, catchment and river management. So in this particular example, the content was catchment and river management. And what's important is this question is asking of you to discuss both positive and negative. What positive and negative? Sustainable strategies. What is sustainable? Remember your grade 11 content on resources and sustainability? What can be used now and still protected for future generations? And in this particular example, we're looking at river management. And why is it important for all sectors of the economy? Can you see the loading of this question? What are your sectors of the economy? You got it. Primary, secondary, and tertiary. So we need to analyze how we need to sustainably manage river systems in this country and how they would benefit primary, secondary, and tertiary economic activities. Can you see how we've worked through this question? Are you doing the same when you are revising, trying to identify the different words within a question to know how you need to respond? Let's look at some of the responses on this question. And note, I've divided my responses into the expectation. The expectation for you to score the marks will be your ability to recognize that your responses must be driven by both by primary activities, secondary activities, as well as tertiary activities. Let's focus on these responses. Access, and you'll note access is a qualifying word. To quality water improves crop production. Am I discussing? Yes, I am. I'm qualifying the water as access to quality water to improve crop production. In that one sentence, I've been able to give a discussion. Firstly, the access to the water, and not just water, quality water. What is it doing? Improves crop production. The crops will be better growing. How am I qualifying it, guys? Can you see these words and how you need to place them in order to get the response that is desired? Look at the next one. On the same point, the sentence continues, yields and stimulates economic growth for agricultural activities. In the secondary sector, industries dependent on water will be able to, look at my qualifying word, maintain a reliable, uninterrupted water supply. So not only just am I saying industries also need water, but industries, if they access quality water, will be able to maintain their production, if not improve their production. Can you see how a discussion unfolds? A discussion unfolds where you use qualifying words, increasing, decreasing, maintaining, moderate, and when you're using these words, they qualify the type of response that you want to give. And it helps the person marking your scripts better understand what you're saying in terms of your response to the question. In terms of the tertiary sector, again, using the word maintaining, rivers create sustainable employment. And always remember, when these kinds of questions are asked, you've got to always evaluate, discuss, suggest in terms of employment. And what about employment? Increasing employment, decreasing employment. What will sustainable river management do? It will increase employment. How? Let's look at this response. It'll maintain rivers, maintaining rivers within the municipalities. What do we know in South Africa? Our municipalities manage their river systems. They do. They're supposed to. However, what does it also create? When we maintain our river systems well in this country, it is required that you need people to help you maintain those river systems, ensuring that pollution levels are low. So simply put, how do we sustain the rivers? By creating employment, employing people to manage, people with skills in water quality, semi-skilled and unskilled. Can you see if I've used skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, I'm qualifying it even more. Now I'm better answering my question. So what's our weakness here? Previously, a few words would not give you those marks. Because of the use of the word discuss, you are required to write more. How do you write more? Your qualifying words. By using simple words like increasing, decreasing, maintaining, moderate, the words that we've been using, what is it doing? To the person reading your answers, they are seeing that you are able to qualify the content in terms of a relationship. You're on your way to a better mark. Let's move on. Oh yes, and one more response, stimulates growth. So notice how I'm phrasing it. It's not just growth, it's increasing growth. Stimulating, you didn't have to use the word stimulating. Increasing growth would also have given you this mark. Stimulates growth in ecotourism and biodiversity along protected areas. So what are we doing by sustainably managing rivers? We are increasing the biodiversity along and in the river system. The growth of the flora and fauna would be better. It's stimulating growth. If you don't want to use the word stimulate, it's increasing growth. Means the same thing. So what am I saying, guys? In my responses on paragraph questions, the greatest weakness I am experiencing is that the responses are not qualified. By using qualifying words, it's helping me to write better, respond better, and get better marks. Sounds easy, doesn't it? You've got a lot of thinking to do. Moving on, we've got another example of the November 2015 NSC examination, question 1.64. In this, note the instructional verb starts explain. And the moment I'm seeing explain, it's about, yes, application. Application of my content. What is the content being applied? In this example, approximately 8 lines, that's standard. Why the cost of food and electricity could increase if in future if pollution of the Vaal River is not controlled. The Vaal River is polluted. Yes, we've done that. The quality of the river management and catchment management is not good. So this was a case study. And what did the case study examine in this paragraph? An explanation. Let's change the color of this. So when we're looking at it, we need to explain. What must we explain? The cost of food and electricity. Immediately I'm seeing that my paragraph has 2 parts. 1, cost of food. 2, electricity. And immediately my qualifiers are negatively impacting. Are you picking up how you need to think about paragraph questions? And when we say negative, remember, I'm thinking of how am I going to use the words increasing, decreasing, maintaining, moderate. Are you getting the picture? So I'm not just going to give you the content, I'm going to qualify it. And must be qualified. If the increase in pollution of the Vaal River is not controlled. Notice the word not controlled. So when it's not controlled, pollution levels are going to be higher. What's going to happen to food and electricity? Aha! Let's look at the way the responses were structured. In this particular example, note I've broken up the cost of food. I'm going to go back to my blue, and then how do I qualify food? The quality of food production is dependent on an access to clean and healthy water, which is costly. So, what happens to food? The quality drops. If the quality drops, the production drops, which means that the food out there would increase in price, wouldn't it? So my responses need to be designed according to increasing costs. Notice your question. What happened to the cost of food? What am I going to do? I'm going to talk about my qualifiers. Immediately, you should be talking to increasing costs. And what will be increasing the costs? The increased use of chemicals. So now, with a polluted river, municipalities are expected to purify the river. And what must they use? Chemicals. And what is about chemicals? Costs. Can you see the costs? And someone has to bear those costs. So, what are these types of chemicals? Pesticides, insecticides will be costly. And what am I looking for? Increasing costs. Can you understand that? And what about this? Reduced soil fertility. I'm not just saying that pollution is going to impact on the soil. I'm saying it's reducing the soil fertility. Can you see how my qualifiers are playing on those words and contents? When I'm using those words, it's helping the person marking my papers better understand that I understand what is happening. In this case, increasing costs, reducing soil fertility. You can use the word decreasing. Decreasing soil fertility means the same thing. And that's what I'm trying to get to you guys, that you and the words that you use in your paragraph in full sentences is going to help better be read and qualified, which will enable you to get the mark. So, let's move on. In terms of electricity, notice how I've qualified electricity. Unreliable electricity sources. Stimulates, let's use the word increases, because it means the same thing. Usage of solar energy, which can be costly. What are we saying here? Remember, the Vaal River is responsible for the generation of hydroelectric power. What does this mean? A polluted Vaal River will reduce the value of hydroelectric power. So what are we forced to turn to? Solar power. Can you see the impact of a Vaal River that is polluted? It has ramifications, it has impacts beyond. So you need to understand in terms of costs as well as electricity supply. Farming equipment used to maintain crops will mostly be dependent on electricity, which will impact negatively on production. So we're talking about a central idea, the negative impact of pollution along the Vaal River if it's not maintained. What is happening? Increasing pollution means increasing costs of food. Why? Many farmers are dependent on channeling the water from the Vaal River to their farms. And what happens? If that water is not of the quality, the desired quality, then production of their crops decreases. Can you see how we work relationships into responses? And how simply by using these keywords, increasing, decreasing, it helps the reader of your responses better understand how you understand that impact. Now we're moving on to settlement geography and looking at the paragraph questions in settlement geography with specific emphasis on rural and urban settlements. Again, we've used past and previous exam papers to analyze what type of questions were there and how you should have responded. In the first example, we will do again the November 2019 NSC, and this was question 4.4.4. What you should be doing now is referring to your sources that you have, your question paper, as well as your annexure, and looking at what kind of questions were building up to the paragraph questions. A reminder, your paragraph questions are designed to consolidate that content. Looking at this particular example, in a paragraph, again, a standard statement, 8 lines. And many of you have been asking Woza Matrix, what is it about the 8 lines? Correct, guys, it's approximately 8 lines. You should be writing as much as 4 points. And those 4 points can go over 8 lines. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is to be as concise as possible, making sure that each and every one of your sentences is constructed in a way to give you a mark. In this case, you need 4 points. And why do we say 8? Because we are judging that by the time you've explained or discussed or suggested, your sentences would have taken at least 2 lines. So 1 sentence, 2 lines, 2 marks. You've got to write 4 constructive sentences that will give you the full 8 marks. In this particular example, we looked at how local municipalities can reduce, notice the operative word, reduce, fire hazards for people living in informal settlements. Again, we're dealing with settlement geography. In this particular example, we're dealing with the topic informal settlements. And how does it consolidate itself? You would have did characteristics of informal settlements, the growths of informal settlements, and taking all this knowledge together, what is required of the question? An application level, because here we've got the word, and I'm going to change the color for this one, explain. That means it's an application question. Taking your knowledge of characteristics of informal settlements, the growth of informal settlements, now using that knowledge, analyze how the local municipality can reduce fire hazards for people living in informal settlements. Now take a moment to think when you've done this, and then you'd be able to understand better how informal settlements are designed, therefore have a propensity or have a high rate of fire hazards. Let's look at the possible answers for this one. Improve infrastructure by providing tarred roads, street names. Why? Because if we just give infrastructure, it's not going to help. You need to improve. Notice how I've qualified improving infrastructure. And what is it about informal settlements? Mostly disused roads. We want tarred roads. We need street names. Why? In the time of a fire hazard, when a fire engine is driving through, they need a specific location. And what do we know is a characteristic of informal settlements? No street names. So if given street names, it'll be more accessible. Demarcate plots. Currently, the highest building density in terms of informal settlements is characteristic. Why? Because you've got more buildings in a smaller space. So what should we be doing? We should be demarcating plots within settlements to control growth and reduce clustering. When it's too clustered, the fire hazard would spread that much faster. But if houses are spread out, the chances for more damage is much less. The next point, use approved building materials that are less flammable, as well as they contain and hazardous impacts, as well as the spread. And the last point, educational awareness. So you see, guys, it's about qualifying that content in order for better enabled responses. With that, I think you deserve a break. What do you think, Looney?
Yes, we do. Matrix, let's take a quick break and we'll see you straight after this. Welcome back from the break, Matrix. We are in the last stretch of the show. I hope you guys are still enjoying it. Thank you so much, Cameron, and over to you.
Thanks, Looney, and thanks, Nicolene. And guys, the last segment deals with economic geography. The content lends itself to many types of paragraph questions, and these are mostly located in case studies. And if you've been analyzing past year papers in your studies, you will notice that food security as one of the agricultural aspects of your content is being examined. And many of you in previous years, those matriculants, did not answer it well. Let's look at why and how you can improve in terms of your writing skills. So, economic geography, and in this example, we're looking at the November 2018 examination, and with this examination, you had question 354. And what did it deal with? I'm just going to go back to the question. In a paragraph of approximately 8 lines, and remember, this is standard, 8 lines. You can write a little less or a little more, but what's important is 4 comprehensive full sentences. Now, notice the operative verb, discuss. Ways to improve food security in South Africa. What's my qualifier? In this particular example, improving food security. Our discussion will be about how do we improve food security. If I'm looking at this particular question and analyzing the content, this is what I should be looking at. Remember, it's a 2019 examination. The topic was food security, the discussion was the verb, and we had to examine both sides of an argument. In this case, improving food security in South Africa. How do we do that? And always remember, it's all about my qualifying words. Improving scientific farming methods. I'm not just saying scientific farming methods. Improving scientific farming methods would then qualify to encourage higher yields. Using genetically modified crops to increase food production. Government to provide incentives for small-scale farming to, yes, increase food production. More training and skills development to encourage, and remember, this is a positive. If we're encouraging large-scale farming, what are we doing? Improving the number of commercial farmers that are available. Hence, our yields of crops are higher, and what does it do? Improve food security. Can you see where we are going with paragraph questions? It is about the content, but what's more important is how you qualify that content. And the words that you are using help you better understand what is going on in terms of that relationship. Let's look at another question. In the 2018 same examination paper, we looked at question 365, and this one looks at, are you looking for the verb? Correct. Analyze. In this particular examination, the instructional verb was analyze. Reasons for South Africa's low security food index. If I'm picturing this examination, it was about a case study that shows that South Africa is ill-equipped to give all its inhabitants access to nutritious food. What does the question want you to do? Analyze. Give an opinion. Correct. When you analyze, you're giving your opinion about the reasons for South Africa's low food security index. Now take a moment to think about this. Why would South Africa's low food security index be? Exactly. Are you thinking about it in terms of agricultural outputs? Let's look at some of these responses. In this particular examination, remember, always analyze your question. Moving on, the lack of investment in advanced scientific knowledge to improve crop production. Notice how I've qualified this particular response in terms of the lack of investment. I'm not just saying investment, I'm saying the lack of investment in scientific farming methods has done what? Reduced crop production. Why is scientific important? Because scientific helps us to produce genetically modified crops, which help enhance the growth of crops. In terms of this, genetically modified crops. Look at the next point. High importation costs of genetic modified samples from developed nations. What are we doing in South Africa? We are buying genetically modified samples to grow in this country. We've got an ability in this country to develop our own scientific knowledge of genetically modified crops. So an investment would help better understand and produce, yes, to enable food security. Are you seeing this picture? It's not so much about the genetic modified crops that is in your content, but how you're qualifying it. The lack of scientific knowledge, the lack of investment. How am I doing it? In paragraph formats. Let's look at another question. In this particular question, we've looked at other answers in previous questions. Government does not provide adequate subsidies to support and allocate to land reform processes. A very important process that is happening in our country is land reform. Now, if government is not subsidizing it adequately, what happens? Lowers food production, lowers our food security index. What about regulations? And when we're talking about using the word regulation in a response, we are talking to policy and procedure. What kind of policies and procedures are in place to improve food security? Here, it's about government regulations. And what are we talking about? Through policy, impact on agricultural communities' ability to improve food production. So a lot is dependent on the government in improving the food security levels. And how can they do that? By investing in communities. How? Yes, guys, when you invest in communities, it's about government regulations. And government regulations deals with policy. So we want more government subsidies. We want more regulations. But those regulations must be designed to enable farmers to produce food for the growing country. Moving on, we're looking at another question here in the 2015 November. And what did it state? Your standard statement, 8 lines. Look at the operative or instructional verb, propose. Propose is the same as, correct, suggest. And what are you doing? You are giving an idea of what you think the content should be about. In this particular example, what is being asked of you? What do you think about improving food security in South Africa. Can you see the patterns that are emerging in terms of when you are asked to respond, you are asked, how does it improve? How does it decrease? Are we getting a picture? The type of responses should have been, and that's an analysis of the question, agricultural methods focused on improved production, the use of genetically modified crops, the incentives and subsidies for farmers, encourage and accelerate local production of processed foods. All matters that are improving food security in this country. With that, you are enabled now to better understand how to respond to paragraph writing. What is key is the following. Remember, you will have to leave a line open after each response. So if you remember additional facts you are writing, you can always add more points. What is an experience through most learners is the following. Candidates, when you write a paragraph, you sometimes are unable to remember all the points that you should. So what should you do? After you've written the last point that you remember, it may be 3 or 2, leave a space so that when you're answering other questions, it may jog your memory and then you have space to go back and write another response, especially when it comes to paragraph writing. Always answer in full sentences. Remember, and my colleagues who've been presenting to you have been saying, you cannot write a paragraph in a point form. You have to write in full sentences. If it's not in a full sentence, you're not going to get the mark. So write in full sentences. Formulate your experiential knowledge. And this is key, especially when you're using verbs like suggest and propose. What is being asked of you? Your experiences, your ideas must come out through that content. Meaningful sentences that can link to geographical terminology. So the secret about paragraph writing, number 1, is to know your content. Number 2, know your experiential knowledge. Bring that knowledge into the content, especially when it comes to verbs like suggest and propose. Application type questions require you to explain or discuss. All you have to do is be able to analyze each question, know its requirements, and then break it up into its requisite content. With that, guys, it's up to you to ensure that your paragraphs are scored at a maximum. I hope you've been given ideas today of how you need to structure sentences and what words should be used. Remember, increasing, decreasing, high, low, moderate, maintain. Are we getting the picture? I'm sure you're going to score more marks in your paragraph. With that, thanks for today, and it's back to Looney.
Thank you, Camelin. Matrix has been a great show. I hope you guys did enjoy it. Please use our resources to study and help you prepare. Congratulations to all of our competition winners who will be announced on Facebook after the show. For more of our schedule and study resources, visit www.wasamatrix.co.za, and if you missed any of the lessons, they are available on our YouTube channel. From me, Looney, Nicolene, and Camelin, thank you and goodbye.
2020. Congratulations for being so brave, so committed, and for staying the course during one of the most difficult years in our history. We're here to support you all the way. Our Was a Matric campaign was set up to support you up until the 8th of December 2020. We are offering you interactive exam guides, shows on SABC3, DSTV, Catch Up, and OVHD Channel 122 that are not to be missed. I wish you all the best in your final exams. You are the hope and the future of our country, and we're so proud of you for coming this far. No matter the outcome, you are at the finish line. Now give it your very, very best. And I thank you.